that good jazz is going on. Everybody's having fun. I did some shit today which sucked balls. I will tell you about that. My pop filter is too low. I must fix that. I must fix it immediately. I hope everyone's feeling good. I am not. I know, sad day or what, but this actually livens me up. I'm so tired. I don't know why. I remember sleeping. I remember it happening. I was there. I slept. It was fine. And now I'm just absolutely drained of all life. I have had a bit of a shitty day. But we'll get into that, shall we? We'll talk about shitty day. Somebody sent me a link, which was pretty awesome, of something that you could do with a DK and Gerthalak, which is really cool. It was one of those things like the Warriors, 60k DPS and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to reenact it for you guys and make it into a cool little video. So last week I tried to get Gerthalak on my DK. I didn't need Gerthalak on my DK. My DK is pretty geared to, well, Fireland's geared to the teeth. He's not that bad. And I tried to get it and didn't get it in LFR. So I went again today. I thought, reset day. Oh yeah, I can try again for the Gerthalak. Surely I'll get it this time. No, didn't happen. Oh my god. Was I not in the mood for looking for raid? There's certain... I understand the need for looking for raid. There is a legitimate reason looking for raid exists. It appeases many, many, many people. Not me. It does not appease me. It appeases me in a way for certain things, like I need this weapon for its proc to do something. That's it. It's the only time I've ever felt I needed looking for raid. Other times are to demonstrate things for you guys. Looking for raid is a nice environment where I can sort of get away with not pushing myself to the max to demonstrate some particular thing. Fuck looking for raid, man. Sometimes it's just like walking through mud. It really is like walking through mud sometimes doing a looking for raid. Wiping how many times in Ultraxion? Dying repeatedly on Warmaster just from aggro. Because people just can't hold aggro. I saw one tank tanking the fucking Drakes on Warmaster that aren't tankable. The Feral Druid. If it would have been any other class I wouldn't have even noticed. But he was a bear. And I died. And when I died I looked around and he's tanking the Drakes, the untankable Drakes. Then comes Spine of Deathwing. If you know how to play Spine of Deathwing, you can do crazy DPS without causing any risk. I know how to do that. And I was doing tremendous DPS for looking for raid. About 43k DPS, right around tendon number 2. It was about 43k. The rage I started to receive from people who believed I was putting my pet on the amalgamation. My god. A whisper spam. Preach is a fucking moron. I was doing everything correctly, believe me. I was fine. Everything was kosher. It was going really well. I was essentially killing the amalgamations and the bloods and then swapping in between as necessary. But the damage meter looked ridiculous. Obviously, I got all the blame for the hunter who was DPSing tentacles randomly. His pet was everywhere. God knows what the hell was going on. And then, of course, Madness of Deathwing. The bane of looking for raid. I almost feel like Madness of Deathwing in looking for raid needs a nerf. Because so many groups just cannot handle that boss. And that is against the idea of looking for raid. They just can't do it. So we wiped on Madness twice. Then we got a new tank. This tank didn't realise that at some point when you're tanking, you need to be in melee range. So what does he do? He just fucks off and left it. So when the other tank got impaled, he left the tentacle too. Guess who got aggro? Me. I died 3 times. I kept getting combat res because my DPS meter was so retarded on that fight. People kept combat resing me. And I almost got to the point where I was like, stop fucking resing me. I don't want to play this shit fight anymore. Ultimately, they wiped again. And I was like, I would rather just stick with this group because people start leaving and stuff like that and try for the Gerthalak. And then you see that crappy, bountiful bag fall on you. Oh my god. The new looking for raid system, again, I understand why it exists. Because the general population of WoW are fucking assholes. They seriously are. They're just... Why are rogues needing multiple tier items and so on and so forth? Why are feral druids needing my fucking intellect trinket off my warlock? Repeatedly, might I add, with their equipped dagger of agility or whatever. It's so frustrating to see. On my warlock, I was missing trinkets. I had a brilliantly heroic Dragon Soul geared Warlock besides trinkets. In fact, the Will of Unbinding, I believe it's called, from Spine Looking for Raid, was a legitimate upgrade for my Warlock who'd killed Heroic Deathwing multiple times, because we kept selling ours to buyers. They weren't necessary, but I wanted to upgrade my character. Probably about 14 runs or something, and it dropped about 8 times in those runs. Dropped all the fucking time. I never won it. I lost it to Enhancement Shaman. I lost it to Feral Druids. I just lost it to all sorts of shit. I hate looking for raids sometimes. It drives me absolutely insane. I was dropping anti-magic zones on the melee. I was the one DPSing all the tentacles, all the blisterings, and all that kind of stuff. And I just couldn't kill it, and that's so frustrating. It's like being back in one of those really casual guilds who don't care about progression or learning about their class or doing anything correctly, and therefore just hope they will kill the boss. People seem to believe that the reason bosses die is multiple tries. Oh, you had more goes at the boss. To some extent, that's kind of true, but more because certain conditions need to be met in order for a boss to die, easy or not. In general, you have to be able to defeat its mechanics. Once you understand the mechanics of a boss fight, it's all down to player error why you don't kill it, and which guild aligns in order to kill that boss. Some guilds are of the opinion, where they never modify their tactics or look for errors or weak things, that the more times we throw ourselves at the boss, the stars will align and we'll magically kill it, and they just repeatedly smash their faces into brick walls. I've been in those guilds and it's just horrendous. That's why I always promote you to leave your guilds if you feel in that situation. If you feel like you're performing better than your guildmates, it's time to move on. It really is. Otherwise you will literally be breaking your nose every time you play. On top of that, I'm going to really rant about my day because it fucking sucked. I had a meeting at 12:30, which I didn't put in my diary. I put it in my phone. I have 2 diaries. I have phone diary and I have my book diary. And I generally check my book. I didn't check my book today. In fact, I was doing the new video, which was the key binding thing. I was trying to work some green screen stuff back into it to make it look classy. I was doing all sorts of shit. And I just forgot. And then my phone went off and said meeting in 35 minutes, leaving me plenty of time normally to get to where this destination is, about 4 miles away. That destination is usually because Emma's working from home and we jump in the car together, we'll go off, I'll do my appointment, we'll grab some lunch, we'll come back, all good, all easy stuff. But Emma had an emergency this morning and had to go and work somewhere else. So I had no means of transport because I've returned my car. I had to fucking hoof it because Emma also had my bank card. So I couldn't get any money to use public transport, which I haven't had to use for years. Not that I've got anything against public transport, it's there for a reason. I just couldn't use it, so I had to fucking walk 4 miles to this appointment. Fast. 4 miles in 30 minutes is a fast fucking walk, seriously. And I had all my clobber on, I had my shirt on, I had my shoes, my shiny pants. Not the stuff you want to be hoofing a 4 mile walk in. Got to the meeting all flustered, kind of hot, bit sticky. I had to go in the bathroom, sort of freshen up a little bit. Left myself about 30 seconds before my appointment because I never want to be late. And the appointment lasted like 5 minutes. It was a total waste of my fucking time. And then I had to walk back again, which sucked. In the meantime, I also missed lunch because I had work to do in the afternoon. Ergo, I now feel really tired and sort of minging and fucking So that's my rant for today. Oh no, I've got another rant. When did Blizzard change the reload UI command? When the fuck did that happen? I have never been so profoundly befuddled in my entire life as when I was trying to reload my UI. Sometimes grid bugs, okay? I get into a raid and grid bugs and I have to reload my UI. It happened a couple of days ago. I forgot to bring it up to you guys. I've known the reload UI command for 8 years now. It just didn't work. I kept typing it, it didn't work. And it's one of those moments where you instinctively, your fingers know what to press, but nothing was coming out. And you start thinking like, do I know how to take a pee? How do I pee? It's one of those moments. If you really think about stuff, you don't know how you pee. You kind of push and things happen. Your brain knows how to do it. But if you sat down and tried to describe how do you pee to someone, you're like, well, you kind of like squeeze your bladder, I think. I think that's what's happening. I don't really know. I've never had to think about how I pee. I need to pee, I go to the toilet, my brain does its stuff, and piss comes out everywhere. It was one of those things. I'm just looking at my fucking keyboard, and I'm like... And I kept pressing enter. And it's like when you know your password, and it isn't working. But you know it's the password, and you're just typing it over and over again. Enter, no, enter, no, enter, no. I'm just looking at my keyboard, I'm like... do I know how to reload my UI? Do I know how to do this? I had to ask in Stark in the guild. I'm like, how do I reload the UI? And they're like, oh, there's a space now in this bit. Why? Why have you changed that? What the fuck, Blizz? Brad, you're some fucking crazy fool, man. Why did you screw with my reload UI command? Of all the things to mess with, that's what you decided to mess with? Dude, it made me so mad. It really did. Oh, frustrating as all hell. Okay, while we're on the subject of Brad, Brad's been at it again. Although I am exhausted, I have a headache, it's banging, and I need to rest. I will try and keep up with the pace, so hopefully everything is cool. If not, I apologise if I'm not on my usual game. To describe that story about the reload UI thing, I only remembered because Genji brought it up to me in a Skype conversation, and quite literally 5 minutes later, I could not remember what we spoke about. Although I was like, oh, we should use that in the daily. And I was asking Genji, I was like, what were we talking about 5 minutes ago? And he brought up all his subjects. I'm like, no, it wasn't that. I had no memory whatsoever about this conversation. I couldn't remember it. It was only when I was walking around, I was like, oh, it was about reload UI. It's like when you lose your phone. You had it 30 seconds ago, and now you don't know where it is. But I was in this room, I was stood here, I was using my phone. Where can it have gone? And you're looking everywhere. You're looking rooms you weren't in. Maybe I took it in there, but I never went in that room. Maybe it went in that room. I don't know. I mean, one of those kind of, my brain stopped kind of situations, which is really annoying. So yeah, Brad's been at it again. Let's get on some WoW news. I'm going to cover my topics. I'm aiming for about 30 minutes today. Brad's been at it again. Alright? Yesterday we spoke about the Theramore scenario, didn't we? We spoke about it. It's pretty garbage. There's not a lot going on. Brad's on the case. And I can imagine this meeting went on at Blizzard. It's like, dudes, we've introduced the scenarios. We've been talking and hyping up these scenarios for months, and they're not happy. They're not happy. What can we do to change it? What can we do? And Brad, like, went, I got you, bros. What we do, right, is we double the HP of the mobs. What? Are you fucking serious? Why would you do that? Oh my god. Let's make it longer. Yeah, that's it. Because the problem with the Theramore scenario is that the mobs haven't got enough health. That's what it is. They're clearing it too easily. That's the problem. That's what it is. I've got my finger on it. I know what it is. It's because they're killing the things too quickly. The trash. That must be it. Let's double it. Yeah! And everyone was like, that's the fucking answer. That's it. That's the solution. Good job, everybody. Pat each other on the back. Give Brad another promotion. Go on, Brad. You've done it again. You've saved the day. Absolute hero. Now people will feel it's a journey. Yeah, the Theramore scenario now has more HP on the ads. Are you kidding me? It now takes me longer to fucking smash my face through all that crap. Great. That's what it was. It wasn't the fact that the entire scenario is completely uninteresting and not related to what we're talking about in any normal fashion. It feels like a shitty 5-man quest that was introduced in vanilla in Hillsbrad Foothills or some shit, or South Shore, whatever you want to call it. That's what it feels like. It's nothing to do with the mob HP. We're doubling the HP of the mobs. That'll fix it. Everyone's going to love it now. It's going to be a party. I bet the queues skyrocket now because we've doubled that HP. People will be thinking, dude, we get to spend longer in the Theramore Isles these days. Are you kidding me? Longer? Yeah, really. They've doubled the HP of the mobs. It's going to be really cool. Oh, wow. I'm there, man. I'm there. Let's queue. Let's fucking queue. Let's go. I don't think that's going to do it. I understand that they can't just redesign it. I would have just left it as is instead of putting out some message that seems like you're trying to fix it. I understand that this fix is because people are soloing it, essentially. Like, warriors with Victory Rush cannot die. You cannot die in that dungeon. And if you do, you're doing something really wrong. I understand that, but it looks like it's supposed to be some sort of fix because of how bad it is. I would have left it. I really would. Or at least tagged it on to prevent soloing of the scenario. That would have been okay. We would have done that. It's a bit of a day of grim news all around as well. This subject is something that you guys know. Me and Ghost are profound fans of, and that's wrestling. In America. WWE or WWF is when I enjoyed it. I don't follow it anymore. I haven't followed it for many years. Since the Attitude Era sort of came to an end. I was a huge fan of things like ECW. And now it's something that I know exists. I talk about it fondly in sort of a nostalgic way. But I only just found out yesterday Jerry Lawler had a heart attack on the show, like on Raw. I mean, a lot of you won't care about wrestling, which It was okay, I guess, but Jesus Christ, I was like all over that shit. I was like, Jerry Lawler, really? This guy entertained the shit out of me for years. I fucking love Jerry the King. Jerry the King is so clever as an entertainer. And I mean, most people who follow him now, or maybe picked him up as a commentator, will not understand what he did and why he's such a powerhouse in the business. He's been fired so many times. And you know what? They keep hiring him back because he's fucking awesome and he's super intelligent as an entertainer. And I really see the value in that. If you've never seen Man on the Moon with Jim Carrey, it shows you part of the things that Jerry Lawler did in his past. He's in that movie for a good reason. He did a work, which is a falsehood, which really baffled tons and tons of people. Across the world, they thought it was genuine and stuff. He thought it broke somebody's neck. And it went on TV. They had a fight on a live talk show. They did all sorts of stuff. And that's the value of entertainment. A lie can be fantastic if it's done correctly. He really understood the value of that. A very wise man in terms of how to entertain people properly. So I was really touched. Luckily, he's getting better. But having a heart attack during a live show, that sucks, man. That's fucking terrible. I really, really was like, oh, damn, man. That's fucking awful. I mean, I was watching when Owen Hart died. I was watching the TV when that happened live. Obviously, you didn't see it. Nobody saw it. It was during an ad break. But when he died in the ring, it's such a horrible feeling, especially if you respect what those guys do. It's all good saying wrestling's fake and stuff. You tell that to Owen Hart, baby. You tell that to Owen Hart. Okay. Again, more bad news. Let's talk about Steam for a second. Before we get back onto any WoW subjects and stuff like that. Steam. Do you love or do you hate Steam? I personally love what Steam is. It's the easiest way in the world to buy games and keep them collected and to make playing your games easier. On the other hand, I hate how Steam works. Steam is something that is valued by pretty much everybody who owns a PC. Anybody who's ever used Steam understands why it's a cool thing. However, Steam is also a very, very shady business practice. Really shady and really bad for us as consumers. It's terrible. It's one of the most... It's got away with it for a long time because Valve, who owns Steam, also produced some of the best games ever made. Few and far between, we'll admit. Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead 2, Half-Life series, Counter-Strike, Team Fortress. Some of the best games easily on the PC in the history of PCs. Portal. Very innovative, very clever, and people love Valve. I love Valve. I love their games. I quite like Steam, but I also hate Steam. I hate Steam for a lot of reasons. One is a DRM. Steam, if you have single-player games that are purely offline games, Fallout 3, for example, and you lose your internet connection, you can't play it. You can't play your own games that you've bought, although there's no online functionality that you want to play. You can't even play the single-player offline version. You can't do it. If you can't connect to Steam, you just can't play the game. The game is sat on your computer. You can't play it. Around about August last year, Steam released a new EULA, your End User License Agreement. That's your agreement between Valve and yourself. Part of that agreement, most of us clicked OK. If you read it in detail, it was actually a very shady agreement that came out. Essentially, the nuts and bolts of this agreement are that Steam owns your games. And at their discretion, they can ban your account and you lose all your games that you've bought. Although you have paid and bought them, they're still licensed to Steam and not you. It's essentially their property and they can ban you from using them at a whim. Some real big Steam collectors have hundreds of games. They buy indie games, free-to-play games, AAA titles and everything in between, and they have lists of hundreds of games. At any point, if Steam isn't happy with you for whatever reason, they can ban your account and you lose access to potentially thousands of pounds or dollars worth of titles that you could just no longer play because Steam has banned your account. There was a recent discussion in the European courts regarding how is digital property to be valued. When you buy something, it is the law that you are able to do whatever the fuck you want with it afterwards, as long as you're not reproducing it in some fashion to sell on as copies and duplicates, such as piracy, okay? If you buy a movie and start copying that movie, you're not allowed to do that because that's not what that property is for, that's piracy. However, you should be able to buy a movie, a DVD, and then you should be able to sell it to your friends should you see fit. It's your property, you can do whatever the fuck you want with it. Digital property lies in this weird grey area, and it has done for a very, very long time. There's no physical copy of it. However, you own the game. But now, we're being told by Valve, and Valve specifically, you do not own that game. Valve owns your game. You have paid the same price as you would as if you walked into a store, on most cases, unless you bought something in a sale. Games go on sale in stores as well. There's no legitimate difference between a Steam summer sale and a store summer sale. There's no difference in whether you own the box copy. They're the same price. You've paid exactly the same. You, for all intents and purposes, own it. However, Steam reserves the right to refuse to allow you to use that property. So the European courts made a declaration that digital copies of software that are bought need to be able to be traded or sold should the user want to do that. Because they own it. They own that copy, that license key. Remember, what you're essentially buying is not the software of the game. You're buying the key to allow you to use it. That's what you're essentially doing. Companies like Gearbox with Borderlands 2, they can reproduce the game of Borderlands 2 in infinite amounts. They will only release keys to access the game for money. Okay, do you understand how it works? Although the game can be mass-produced and just distributed anywhere. Anybody can install Borderlands 2 on their PC, but you need a key to activate it. That's how they work digital sales. They produce a certain amount of keys, so they can then track how many copies they have actually sold. Okay, very easy stuff. So the European courts ruled that digital copies need to be able to be transferred, sold, traded, whatever a user wants to do with it. Valve quickly responded in August by releasing this new end-user license agreement, which said, hey, we understand what the European European court has decided. However, we need you to sign this, which says that you accept that Valve owns your games. If you read that, you probably wanted to decline it. However, if you declined that, then they blocked out all your games. They said, okay, you don't agree to our terms of service, then you can't play any of the games you already own. So you are forced. You were literally forced to accept that agreement. Most of us never read it. New EULA, yeah, whatever. Fucking scroll down, click accept, move on, not interested. If you ever seen the South Park episode, the iCenter pad, it's the same thing. No one ever reads the terms and conditions of anything whatsoever. And Steve Jobs, of course, sews your mouth to your anus if you do that for Apple. Same thing, no one ever reads it, most people won't even know about it. But if you accepted that, which everybody did, if you're playing a game on Steam now, you accepted this agreement, is that Valve owns it. The European Court has literally just said, Valve, fuck you. Now this is on our behalf. They've said that is not fair. Those guys have bought them games. You cannot reserve the right to take those games away from people or prevent them from selling and trading those games if they so desire. Because there is technically no difference between a bought copy that's on a disc or the digital copy. They still bought the game. They still own it. It's your property. They have given Valve 2 days, I think. September 28th it runs out. September 28th? A little bit longer. September 28th of next week it is. They have to change their EULA. Steam has to. By law, they now need to change it. This is actually for our benefit, because we don't own our games. I own games on Steam, I'm sure many of you do. We don't own our games. The court has said you've got 2 days to change this. This is law, you're violating the law, and essentially you're ripping off and abusing your customers. Valve has always done this. Steam is notoriously bad for customer service, for getting back to anybody. It's just a sales site, and they generally do not do great with customer service. If you have a big problem on Steam, it tends to be a real issue that they cannot resolve. A lot of people who move between countries, let's say if you move from the UK to the US, very, very difficult for Steam to even bother to care, even when you tell them that you no longer live in the UK, you live in the US, here's the proof, anything like that, and then they let you play the US games when they release. Like Borderlands 2 is released in the US early. However, it doesn't matter. If you previously lived in the UK and now live in the US, your Steam account is very difficult to update. They're terrible with customer service. But we let it slide because Steam's a good service. It is what it is. When it's working fine, it's fantastic, and all their games are good. So we have a Valve in a very high profile. What's the results of this? Why am I talking about it? This is very dangerous because Valve now has to either A, fuck us all off, which they probably won't do because Steam is a gold mine, an absolute gold mine. You can't imagine how many transactions take place on Steam per day where they take a little slice off the top. But they now need to work in a system where we can trade and sell games via Steam. Unless they want to start giving us offline access, which they really don't want to do. They get a lot of metrics and data. This is a back end of how Steam works. We might think that Steam only works by taking the little slice every time we do a transaction. There's also back ends of this. By making people play all their games through Steam, they get a lot of data, which is important to a lot of companies, especially the graphics cards companies. Nvidia, AMD, they essentially track their progress from Steam. What are all the gamers using? Where are we in the charts? All this data. Is there an opening for processors? Don't think that Intel doesn't buy data from Steam or from Valve. All this sort of metrics and data is selling for huge amounts on the markets. They love selling your information. Fuck. Everybody loves selling your information. You have to pay these days to not appear on people's calling lists. You know, you get them annoying phone calls every day. In order to not get that every day, you have to phone a company and pay them to remove you from lists. It's terrible. And even then, it's not 100%. That's the world we live in. Your information is a valuable asset. People want to know what to sell you and if you need it. If there's a sudden huge decline in the quality of processors amongst all the gamers, like the average processor is saying i3, then there's an opportunity there to really push i5s at a cheaper rate, or i7s. Intel sees that and starts flooding the market and so on and so forth. So what is Steam's reaction going to be to this is going to be really interesting. But it's a dangerous time. There's a big precedent being set here, and the fact that Valve have been pushed into the back of a corner and given a week to sort this out, it's not an easy task. I'm very worried that Valve could quite simply say, fuck you, and they could turn off all our games. That could happen. At some point, that might happen. What happens if Valve goes down under? What's going to happen? It's not likely. It's not likely, but it could happen. It could happen. We don't know. We don't really know. It's a little bit ropey. So, Jerry Lawler, heart attack. Steam in a bad situation. I'm not the bearer of good news today. I'm not the bearer of good news, which is pretty crazy. Okay, I want to talk about some questions. I've already gone over 30 minutes, pretty much, which I didn't want to do. Okay, too many damn buttons. This was the title of this email I received. You know who you are because you titled it. Too many damn buttons. I've never considered WoW to have too many buttons, which coincides with the topic of today's video on the YouTube channel, which is clicking. The forever clicking issue. I get a lot of emails. I would say on average I receive somewhere in the region of about 20 to 30 emails per day. It's not a great number by huge YouTubers standards, but it's a lot for me on my own to be reading through. A lot of them are, what's your UI? And every now and again I get this question about clicking again. I've done 4 videos total now on clicking, 5 including today's, where I've thought of every single technique under the sun that I can possibly think of in order to improve your gameplay. And when I say gameplay, I don't mean in World of Warcraft. I'm talking about everything, which is why I did today's video as well. I wanted to address this topic and sort of put a full stop to this subject. This is the end result. That's what it looks like. That's what you should be aiming for. All pretty cool, and it is important. You can see the speed of reaction time when you can see how quickly my fingers are moving. Just simple stuff like that. Nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary. But the question I keep getting is, what are your keybinds? One of the most common questions I get asked, what are your keybinds? Long-time watchers will know I don't want to release that because my keybinds are A, completely messed up because I've been playing since vanilla. That's a lot of new abilities that have been added over the years. Therefore, some of my keybinds are absolutely insane. Keybinds? What the? Keybinds? What is wrong with my brain? Keybinds? Are you fucking kidding me? Keybinds? Oh my god. Keybinds. Ugh. Keybinds. Keybinds are they're completely crazy. They're completely stupid. You would never use them. And plus, it's important for you to discover your own keybinds. Keybind? I can't say keybinds. That's where my brain is today. Keybinds. Discover your own, get comfortable with them, and make whatever's comfortable for you. Copying me will not improve your gameplay by any means. I want you to find your own way. I want you to find your own path. I will light the way. I will push you in the right direction, but you walk the extra mile and you'll come out better for it at the end of it. That's what I tried to say. So, I heard recently from my brother. My brother has always struggled with keybinding. He's much older than me, much older than most of us. So we kind of forgive him that fallacy. But he's always struggled with it. He even bought a Razer Naga when Star Wars: The Old Republic came out. He went and bought himself a Razer Naga, and he was keybinded for about a month and a half. He was getting really good at it. He even spoke to me about it. It's like, I'm key binding. I could never do it in WoW because he'd been playing since vanilla, so that's almost like 6 or 7 years of habit to break. Not easy. But Star Wars The Republic, fresh start. He was really excited for it, as was many people in our circle. And he bought a Naga, and he was keybinding everything. He was having a great time. And then slowly, he just started to crack as more and more abilities came in. Now, he switches games a lot, my brother. Sometimes he'll be playing Rift. He'll cancel his account, so he cancels Star Wars, he goes and plays Rift. He cancels that, he plays a little bit of WoW. And then recently, he cancelled WoW, and he went back to Star Wars The Old Republic. And he said he really enjoys it. Really, really enjoys it. And that's fine. And I said, what is it really about Star Wars The Republic that you particularly enjoy? Because none of us are playing there, so you're certainly not playing with close friends. WoW has too many buttons. Now, as I've grown with the game, it isn't something I'd ever taken time to consider, as WoW got too many abilities. And then I did today's video where I counted up my key bindings, which was 46. I have 46 key bindings on my warrior. WoW has too many abilities. I think that's pretty much a dead cert. The question that came in for this too many damn buttons is that key bindings are in such short supply these days. I would disagree with that, but I kind of have tools to get around that. I have 1 million modifiers on this keyboard, 1 million modifiers with my mouse, and so on and so forth. And a lot of choices in the talent trees are new key bindings. So, like as a shaman, you have a choice of astral shift, some sort of cooldown, then an extra totem, and these are all spells that need to be key binded on top of what you've got in your stable originally. And he's saying he's actually generally picking passive abilities in order to avoid having to get more and more key bindings. So it got me thinking, are we in a world where key bindings are... Has WoW got too many abilities? I think it does. But I don't think that's a bad thing, in a way. As hypocritical as that sounds, I quite enjoy it. But I can sort of see how quickly we level in World of Warcraft, that it become a little bit overwhelming with how many keybinds there are. We have a lot of superfluous key bindings that we kind of use every now and again. Okay, we're using them every now and again. Let's say if we're not PvPing and we're playing a hunter, things like flare. How often do we use flare anymore? Trank shot. Sure, in PvP we use it a lot, but there's a lot of people who go one way or the other. How are we doing that? We have a lot of extra abilities. Now, they all have a use. I'm not saying that they're useless spells. They all have a use. I use them whenever I can. And in general, it works out quite well. You could even say the same for a PvPer using misdirects. If you're a pure PvPer, misdirect's pretty fucking useless to you, really. And it's just there, and it's an extra key binding that sits there, and it doesn't do anything, and you kind of have it there. And it's a little bit daunting. A little bit daunting. And some players are being put off by that. What I always think to myself is somebody's sending me an email regarding it. There's a lot of other people there who think that. So my brother told me this. And this chap here told me this. So maybe WoW does have a problem with that. And then I checked out Guild Wars. Guild Wars has hardly any spells. Has a lot of choice. Hell of a lot of choice of spells, but in terms of your action bar, not many at all. Diablo 3 the same. Infinite almost amount of abilities and modifications that go along with it. The amount of things you can do with a character in Diablo 3 is almost endless. There's obviously a finite amount, but there's so much variation at what you can do. However, your bar just resorts down to the basic abilities. League of Legends, these MOBA style games, all the same thing, down to as little abilities as possible, although in fact there's an endless choice. Could WoW doing with resorting to that kind of skill tree? They've done it with the talents. All these talents, all these choices, let's reduce them down and get them down to it. But is one of the problems with a lot of players now who have been growing with the game, trying to switch over to key binding, one of these issues is there's just so many damn abilities to keybind. I always say do a couple at a time, get used to them, then add a couple more on, and eventually you'll map out a nice keyboard situation. I can see in here that people are saying it's variety. It's a sort of 50-50 split. 50-50 split. 46 buttons is exceptional. You can live with a lot less. Yeah, this is one of the things. You can live with less key bindings. You can. You can get away with less key bindings. But I always like, if I need something, I want it now. There's certainly that 46 number includes things that aren't reactive, like mounts, pots, various different types of things like that, professions, hearthstones, all that kind of stuff which is hidden off my screen. In terms of reactive abilities, there's like a row of 8 or 12, I think. So let's say it's 12, 24, 36. About 36 plus 3 stances, so it's about 39 abilities. I think I have 12 buttons per bar. So about 39 abilities that are bound on my front screen. But I use all of them, and I use them all the effing time. That's a lot of skills if you compare it to new games like Star Wars The Old Republic, Guild Wars 2. They have nowhere near the amount of abilities and is slightly more user-friendly. It could get to the stage, now we're adding our own abilities through the talent tree, that we literally are putting off new players because, God, that's a lot of things to bear in mind. A lot of things go unused because we forget we have them. A lot of shamans don't use a lot of their new totems because there's just so damn many. When do we use them? He was asking me, should he buy a mouse to fix this? This thing is the bane of the fucking MMO world as far as I'm concerned. I love Razer. Most of my stuff is Razer. But this thing is so overhyped. Talk about kicking your own possible sponsorship deals in the teeth, right? But I'm going to be honest with you. I would never recommend this mouse to anybody now. I wouldn't. Someone said, should I buy a Razer Naga, which is the question that comes in this email? No. I really would not. I seriously just would not recommend it to anybody. It is a lot of buttons for the sake of giving advertisers a big number to stick up about the Razer Naga. I think even the box, I can't see the Naga box, that Naga box from here, has some like 17 MMO buttons. All this kind of shit. I was drawn into it as well, as was my brother. Even Ghost was talking about getting the left-handed Naga when it comes out in, I think it's coming out in December, the left-handed Naga. I fucking hate that mouse. I seriously hate it. I detest it. I detest it because it's abusive, it's exploitative towards MMO players, if that makes sense. It's got 17 buttons, there's no denying it. These 2 buttons are a waste of life as far as I'm concerned. These 3 buttons are a waste of life. And it just gets worse from there, essentially. And it's too damn small, for my sake. Now, some people are fine with it. Some people are more than fine with it. It's so unnecessary. It's so damn unnecessary. It really is. I did not buy the Razer and Nancy keyboard because it has an extra 5 modification keys on top of Control, Alt, and Shift. An extra 5 on the side of it that go along with the Naga to create some ridiculous number like 800,000 combinations of bindings. Oh my god, no game needs that. If your game needs that, you're doing something fucking wrong. The Naga Hex, I would recommend. Emma uses a Naga Hex. The Naga Hex, I picked it up and I was like, oh, that's so much better. It feels better. I love it. But this mouse is so billed as the MMO gaming mouse that people ask me all the time, should I buy one? The answer is no. If you ever want to ask me that question again, the answer is no. The answer is fries. The answer is no. If you do want a Razer mouse and you want a good MMO mouse, get a Naga Hex. Because 6 plus the 2 buttons that are actually usable on the top, I just don't think they're usable, is so much better. And Razer knows it too. That's why the Hex exists. It's nothing to do with MOBA. It's because that is fucking overkill. But as a marketing tool, it's fantastic. Saying it's a 17-button mouse is fantastic marketing. In terms of practicality, the Hex or even a simple 5-button gaming mouse is more than enough. I could do everything I do in WoW. It's actually, the only reason I'm sort of ranting about this a little bit is when I watched back the video for today to check everything was cool, I noticed I barely use any of these fucking buttons at all. I've just done everything with my keyboard. And I'm so much happier with that. So much more precise, so much more sturdy and in place. I have 46 key bindings. On my Warrior, there's like 4 key bindings on the side of my mouse. They're just totally unfucking necessary. And a Hex is miles more comfortable. It is. Okay? Enough said. Enough said. Last question. Help with 25-man raid tanking. Our friend here, he moved to Sylvanas a few days ago. Make sure you give me a shout when I'm online. I'd love to say hello. To join a top 200 guild. I'd love to know which one as well. I know most of the guilds on Sylvanas. I think I still do. I think I've still got friends in most of them anyway. Now, he's been recruited along with another tank. You're going to require 2 tanks in Mr. Pandaria. They have 1 tank, a main tank, and they've recruited 2 trials, a DK and a warrior. Our friend is the DK. So now they have 3 tanks. And he says to me, they want 3 tanks. So they want 3 tanks, which means somebody's sitting out. He says, now I don't mind sitting out every now and then, but how do I make myself stick out from the crowd and get the most spots, or at least pass my trial lol? Okay. How do you be a baller? How do you know when a baller joins your guild? If you've been in a guild for a while, especially a raiding guild, you know when a baller joins your guild. How do you become that baller? You know it straight away. You know it as soon as you hear their voice on vent. You know it when they're in the raid, and you go, nice, nice, awesome, thumbs up. Essentially, how do you do it? Now that's not easy. There's a lot of things to take in consideration. How you approach being in the guild, how seriously you want to impress that guild can actually be a detrimental factor. Sometimes you're not yourself. Sometimes you, not being yourself is really horrendous because you can't keep up the act indefinitely. If you're not overly abundant on talking on like Ventrilo and stuff, then being really chatty at the beginning and then dying off, people will think there's something wrong and you're not happy in the guild and like, oh, he's lost his spark, he's lost his flavour, all that kind of thing. But if you're a good player and you're confident in your ability, and you're a tank especially, I'm going to talk about this from a tank point of view initially. It's very, very important that tanks are very vocal. I hate silent tanks. I would ask questions. This is what I always like is, how do you guys, is there any forums I should read up on? Have you got any sort of videos around there? Just so I can check how you're doing these bosses, just to work it out. I mean, some bosses, you know how they do it, right? Fucking Ultraxian. There's not many variations of how that boss is done, either Warmaster Blackhorn or whatever. Ask questions. Be vocal. Talk to your main tank. He's probably been there for a while. Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to raiding with you. Is there anything I should know? Is there a tank channel? Get talking to the main tank initially, because ultimately he's probably got the yay or nay on whether or not you stay and whether or not he wants to play with you. That's the most thing. The best thing about it is people want to play with you. You will get more spots if people want to play with you, regardless of you role, tank, DPS or healer. If you're a generally nice guy and you play well, people will want to play with you. The hardest thing is your first raid. The hardest thing is always your first raid, because you'll undoubtedly make mistakes purely because of how they do the boss or things they've been used to when their tank's obviously left, and you'll run into issues. Luckily, you haven't got much raiding time left, if any, because Mr. Pandaria is coming, and you get to level. If you're a new player, new trial now, you're going to struggle to level with people currently in the guild, more than likely. Tanks, less than so. Healers, less than so. DPS, certainly. There'll all be little cliquey groups of friends who have spoke to each other in whisper. They're going to level together. We're going to be best friends forever. Well, yeah, do you want to level with me? Of course I do. And you won't get chance to take part in that at all. I always try and make friends with the longest term members in different guilds. I didn't do this with Method. I had a different approach to Method because of like reasons why I joined and stuff like that. But in my previous guilds, like Kill Count Lost. Kill Count Lost, the best guild I've ever played in terms of friendliness and community and long-term friendships I've made. The first day I joined there, I'll tell you what I did the first day I joined. Here's the story of how I made my impression on Kill Count Lost. Before I joined, I knew that the main tank, was a baller. I could tell after speaking to him that he was a total tank hero and knew his stuff. Like I knew my stuff, so I was happy enough with that. I didn't care if I didn't pass, which sounds odd, but I was of the opinion that if I didn't make it in one of these top world guilds, it wasn't the end of the world. That would probably be me ending World of Warcraft. I kind of joined the guild like, I'm going to give this a shot, and if it works out, good. If it doesn't, I'm just going to stop playing World of Warcraft. If I can't make it in the top guilds and all I want to do is be a progress raider, then fuck it. I'm not interested at all, you know? I don't care. I'm going to try it out. If it doesn't work, I don't care. Which took a lot of weight off my shoulders. When I transferred to the server, which was Sylvanas, the only officer online was called Mortar. Mortar was the rogue class leader, or physical class leader, whichever you want to call it. I didn't know Mortar. I'd never spoke to him before, but I asked somebody in guild, is there an officer online? And said, yeah, Mortar's on. So I whispered Mortar. I was like, hey, I'm the new tank. Can I get a guild invite like you do when you join a new guild? And he said, oh, can you come to Shattrath? This was during the Burning Crusade. Can you come to Shattrath? Just so I can check you're actually that guy. Because this was one of the top guilds on the server. I think they were second to Method only. And they wanted to make sure that people weren't just trying to get in their guild randomly. So I had to go to Shattrath. So what I did, he wanted to inspect me, check my gear and stuff like that, just to make sure I was geared and I was the tank he was expecting. So I stripped off my cowl completely, my Tauren. He was totally naked. And I knew he said, oh, can you come to Shatrath for inspection? So on the way over, I was flying over. I just removed all my armor and landed in front of him. And landed there and just did a big slash flex with my Tor. And I gave it one of these. Yeah! And he started laughing and he went, oh, okay, can you put your gear on now? But that little thing was a great first impression. I stuck my gear on. He says, okay, cool. Got the guild invite. So then a couple of hours later, it was the first raid, which was to be Black Temple. And Black Temple was a worrisome time for me because I'd done it a little bit with my previous guild, but as if you know from the story, they weren't interested in really raiding it hard. And I didn't know how this guild did it. And I also knew this tank was really sort of serious and into it. So I wasn't expecting an invite. Kill Count Lost already had 2 tanks. They just wanted an extra tank. For certain bosses required 3 tanks, but not all of them. So they wanted their extra tank, but essentially had 2 main tanks, a prop paladin and a prop warrior. I got the invite. It invites you to the raid. And I'm like, oh man. And it's nervous. Although you want to raid, you joined this guild to be a raider. That first time you see that thing pop up on your screen, you've been invited to the raid, can always be a nerve-wracking experience. I accepted and was instantly moved into the raid, and the prop paladin was moved out of the raid. Little did I know that the prop paladin and the prop warrior and about 7 other people all played from the same web cafe in Greece, and they were all students together and all best friends. And the prop paladin turned out to be the guy I spoke about who's always late and is lazy as shit, and he's funny and he's a good guy. So he didn't care, he didn't have to raid. He was like, whatever, I don't give a fuck. And so I was instantly moved into the raid, saw the prop paladin moved out, but I didn't know any of that stuff. So I'm like, I'm replacing the guy who's been here for years. What if he needs loot? Oh man. Sucks. But I thought, forget it. I don't care if I fail. Just put it out of your brain. I didn't get a summon, and I wasn't anywhere near Shadow Moon Valley, which I should have been. If you're on your first raid with a new guild, even if you're not sure if you're going to get invited, get your ass to the instance, so if you do get invited, you're inside. So I'm flying my ass over there as fast as humanly possible. I'm like, oh man, I've got to get over there. Nobody's summoning me. This guild's really serious. They expect you to be in the instance. Remember, there was no such thing as mass summon then. You had to be there and ready to go. So I get into the instance. Luckily, there were still 2 or 3 slackers, like every guild has, who hadn't made it to the instance yet, so I wasn't the last person there. So I ran up, and I just typed /say, it's okay, guys, relax. I'm here. Just like that. I thought, fuck it, you know, I always have a good time. I always try and make a good impression. So I'm like, fuck it. So I just said, hey guys, relax. I'm here. It's okay. We got this. And a couple of guys were like, and you know, whatever. And then someone on Ventrilo, I was obviously in Vent, says, oh, I like the new guy. So I started chatting away with them, which was all pretty cool. And got on with it. And luckily, I was a very impatient tank. This guy's even more impatient than me. And he said, join the tank channel. And join the tank channel. He says, okay, we're starting to pull now. You have the left, you have the right. And it will be like that for the rest of eternity. That's what he said to me. No matter what instance we're doing, no matter what raid, if there is a mob on the left and there's a mob on the right, you get the mob on the left, I get the mob on the right, and that is the end of the fucking story, forever and ever. Amen. I fucking live. And I was like, I fucking love this guy. That is awesome. How many times do you see tanks tank the wrong mobs? Oh, we're all going for the same mob. Blah, blah, blah. For the end of time, even up until Ice Crown Citadel was the last time I raided with him, we always did it that way. For the rest of time. It's fucking beautiful. Off we go. And I'm chain pulling my ass off because he's on my right and he's zooming through the dungeon. And I'm like, well, if he's going that fucking fast, I'm going that fast. I can be as fast as him. And then the both of us started pairing off. I had passed my trial instantly, okay? Pretty much because I was doing that. Pay attention is what I'm trying to tell you in this story. Is pay attention to what others are doing around you of a similar role and copy their actions. If they really work hard on trash and blow a lot of cooldowns, so should you. Keep an eye on what the other guys are doing. If you're a fire mage, what are the other fire mages doing? Are they blowing combustion on every single trash pack? You should be doing the same thing as well. Blow the fuck out of the place. Is it not uncommon to use big raid cooldowns on trash, mainly on trash? Then you should be doing the same thing. So I'm in this first dungeon. I'm talking a little bit on Vent, but I'm still a little bit shy, but I'm feeling good. We're doing some serious chain pulling. And as I said, the other paladin was a little bit more relaxed, and he tends to go after the other tank. So I actually got to the trash pack before him, and he was still finishing his mobs. I fucking charged in, and he whispered me saying, that's nice. Like, straight away, he was like, that's nice. You're not waiting for me to pull. I fucking love that. And I was like, cool. I knew it was safe from all my tanking experience, the same stuff I've passed to you guys, I knew it was safe. In my mind, I'm like, they've got mana. Raid's looking good. His mob's about to die. I'm safe to pull here. I'm in a good position. So I just did it. I just went and pulled. And he's like, that's really cool. Keep the DPS flowing. That's nice. That's all he had to say was that night. That's nice. I was like, awesome, cool. So we got to the first boss. That guy who throws the fucking spears in you. Boom, boom, boom. I forget his name. But he's a loser boss. But he's one tank fight. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to tank here. So I automatically, predictably swap to my DPS gear. Then he says to me, no, you will tank this fight. And I'm like, are you sure? My gear was significantly worse than tier 6. It was like tier 5 with a couple of random stuff. And he was like full tier 6, had the Bulwark of Azeroth and all this. They cleared Black Temple a ton of times. He was like fully geared. And he's like, no, you will tank and you will lead and you will do the announcing. I'm like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? He's like, yeah, I'm leaving the raid now. And he was the raid leader, so he was constantly dictating what was going in the raid. A brilliant raid leader is always communicating, pulling next trash, pulling this trash, pulling this, pulling that, pulling that. And he was leading the raid. He was like, you're in charge now. I'm like, this is my first 4 hours in the guild. I've been in the guild 4 hours. I'm leading your raid. He's like, the tanks lead the raids. This is a one tank fight. It's your job. And I knew that to be true. I knew that to be true. And I was like, I know that's right, but I've been in the guild 4 hours. And he's like, yeah, but you're the tank. You're tanking this fight. You need to announce it. I'm like, oh, God. Again, it was like, well, okay, I've got to do it. And I've done it before. I've been a raid leader for years. No problem. And that was... I'm going to get to an eventuality in this fucking story. I am going to get to a point. So we did the fight and I announced it. I was like, okay, break the shield. I knew when to do that. I can't remember that guy's fucking name. Did someone say the guy's name? What was the name of that fucking boss? Really, I can't remember. He throws he's a big guy with a shell on his hand and he's all that kind of shit. Anyway, I announced it and I kept Threat on the boss. The biggest panic I had was keeping Threat. Remember in TBC, Threat was a major pain in the ass. And I discussed TPS numbers with this other tank, so obviously this was my test, because that boss gave 0 rage. He seriously was the worst boss in history for rage. I think besides Jack Saris was worst, or Lord Jack Saris in TOC was terrible for rage as well. But this boss was equally... Warlord Nagensis. But I kept Threat. It was fucking close though. It was really close. They had some seriously good mages. Really good mages, and they go all out, balls to the wall. And they were right on my ass. Like the threat meter was here with me, and they were like there, and it kept going, just keeping toe to toe. And it died, and I didn't lose aggro, and I was like, oh thank God. And it was so stressful. I was hammering my keyboard so hard, and I was still trying to sound calm on vent. A lot of pressure, really calm on vent. So I'm like, oh, impale on there, impale on the right side, because obviously I've got the boss here, so the guys on the left and the right. So I'm like, impale on the right side. Okay, break the shield. Checking everybody's health and stuff like that. It was stressful as shit. Anyway, after that, he came back into the raid, and they were also DPS testing every single boss. They cleared it so many times. Kill Count Lost was the first guild I'd been in where every single time they found it, they would find a way to improve it. A lot of the ways were how quickly can we kill this boss and get the run clear. So if this fight needed 3 healers, all the healers kicked out. They had DPS waiting to go. If this needed 1 tank, tank's gone. Get the other guys in. How many people can we afford to lose? How many people can we respec? How many people can we get in to kill this boss? All good. What? Terran Gorefiend? I think we'd used to do it with 2 healers. It's fucking crazy shit. And then it comes to Illidan Stormrage. I had never killed Illidan Stormrage. In fact, I'd never even killed the council before it. I forget their name now. But the council before it, I'd never done that before. So I got to tank the Rep Paladin. Which wasn't difficult, but it required something from the tank, which was to spell reflect a specific judgment. I think it was Judgment of Blood, something like that. And move out of Consecration in a fashion that kept Consecration in a certain area and allowed the melee to still DPS it. It was the boss that melee could DPS. The Illidari Council. So I got that job. He said, I'm going to slack and tank the priest who needs interrupting. So he was going to go an AFK just to test me. So and he's like, have you ever tanked the Illidari Council before? I was like, no, we never made it to it. Luckily, I hadn't done Mother Sharaz either, but on Mother Sharaz, I had to AFK due to her parry mechanics. I don't know if anyone knows this, but on the original Mother Sharaz, you needed 3 tanks to share her cleave, but the 2 off tanks weren't allowed to attack because it would cause her to parry and kill the tank. because you got a faster swing speed if she parried your attack. And of course, tanks cause parries. We're not expertise caps. Expertise wasn't even really in the game then, in terms of reforging and stuff. So you couldn't counter it in many ways. You had to have gear with expertise. So you weren't allowed to attack. So Mother Sharaz, we would see where he was stood, the main tank, and then we would just go and stand on it. And then you could go and get a drink. Literally, just leave your PC. It was better for the raid. I used to be a baller as far as I'm concerned and keep up Thunderclap and Demo Shout. That's how cool I was. I was like Mr. Helpful. The prop pally, of course, just went and ate. So you knew the boss was never going to be moved because they were all playing in the same web cafe, and they knew that Marathi had just gone. He'd left his PC. He's like, oh, okay, I'll stand here. See you later. Just walked away. We got to the Ildari Council. He's like, you need to tank the Rep Paladin. Do you know what to do here? I'm like, kind of. I need to spell reflect Seal of Blood, I think it was, or Judgment of Blood. And he's like, yeah. And you need to keep him in this area. And he clicks the map very quickly. He's like, you need to keep him there, and you need to keep the melee safe, and that's about it. I was like, okay. And he hits really fucking hard. If you miss one of these spell reflects, you're probably going to die. That's the situation it was in Black Temple. So off we went, did it, killed it, and then it comes to Illidan Stormrage. Illidan Stormrage, if you ever did it at the time, I have a really stray hair in my nose, I apologise. If you ever did Illidan Stormrage at the time, he required 3 tanks. 1 tank to tank Illidan, and then 2 fire resist tanks who would be useless for the majority of the fight except one crucial phase, which is where he throws the Warglaives into the floor, 2 flames of Azzinoth spawn who hit for pure fire damage. If you're not fire resist capped, you're pretty much dead. So I'd had my fire resist gear. It was one of the big things about being recruited at the time is they needed a tank with fire resist gear. And I was like, yeah, I've got my fire resist gear. And he's like, what's the number on it? I'm like, there, okay, that works. Fine. So I equipped my fire resist gear. I was the kind of guy who farmed my fire resist gear like the second Black Temple was released and we knew we needed it. I went out and farmed it then, although we'd never killed the first boss. But just to be ready, I loved being prepared. I hate people who, now we're at Illidan, oh, now I've got to go and find my fire resist gear. That's fucking shocking. If you know that you need fire resist in one of these fights, you should be farming it from day one. Of course, it's not an issue we deal with anymore. Now, I'd never done this, and then it got all serious. It'd been pretty jovial, pretty relaxed, pretty fun up until this point, and it got really serious. It was like, do you know what you need to do in the Flames of Azzinoth? And I'm like, well, I need to tank them, right? He says, no, but there's a specific way you need to do it, and it's really difficult. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, it's pretty hard, because there's a couple of things that happen. One, every time they shoot a breath, they leave a flame patch on the floor. You need to keep the Flame of Azzinoth in a certain radius of the circle so the melee DPS can always DPS it. They had a strategy of splitting the raid into 4. It's 4 distinct circles of people, and the melee would be able to move around without sharing the splash damage that came down from Illidan. On top of this, Illidan has a laser beam which siphons off 2 edges of the circle. And you need to move in a certain way to not die to that, because it's a one-shot ability, and it can be a little bit difficult to see. And Marathi had experience doing it. Erebus, who was the main tank, he'd never done it before because he main tanked Illidan every time. Illidan required a warrior tank to block his sheer ability, so he had never had any experience with the Flames of Azzinoth. And Marathi wasn't the best at explaining things, and his character starts dancing around this circle, and he's going, just watch what I do, and this is going on. This shit in front of me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, you just put so much pressure on me, and I've been getting more and more relaxed since the first boss, and his character's like jittering around the fucking place, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck are you doing? What are you trying to tell me here? He's like, you've got to do this. You've got to kind of stutter step this way to make sure that this works and that works. I was like, oh man, this sounds really stressful. And he says, don't worry, they'll be killing your ad first, so you'll have the least amount of time to deal with it. And he said, on average, it took our other tank who had just left probably about 20 or 30 goes to master this. So he said, don't worry if we wipe now. This is what he said to me. Don't worry if we wipe now because of you. We expect it to happen. We know this is difficult. If I would have wiped at any other point, apparently that would have been like uber fail. But this point, he was like, don't worry if we wipe now because of you. The raid expects it. And I loved that kind of openness. He was like, if we wipe now, it's fine. It's no problem. So straight up, I fucking start doing my thing. Illidan gets pulled, and I'm loving it. Illidan in Stormrage is a brilliant encounter. It's so epic, and I'm stood in the Black Temple. It's the first time I'm fighting Illidan. I'm like, this is so cool, because he looks really cool. The whole thing on top of Black Temple is so awesome. And I'm trying to do some DPS, so I dual-wield as prot, and I'm spamming Devastate. If you spam Devastate in Fury stance, Berserker stance with dual-wield weapons in prot, it actually did a shitload of damage. It was pretty cool. So I'm spamming it and I'm doing decent damage and stuff, and then my time comes, right? And I'm so nervous. And this is where you really stand out as a player. These moments shine it through. I'm still getting back to the question, don't worry about it. This started from a question, remember that. Got my shield on, and then it starts, right? This thing, I planned it just before. I make sure I auto-attack to get full rage. So I got full rage to unload on this Flame of Azeroth, because the melee are hungry. And I'm talking about progression. This is the first time I played with hardcore progression DPS. Hardcore progression DPSers are fucking hungry for blood. They will not stop under any circumstances until that mob is dead. If you fail, you failed. They will not fail because they fucking care about their DPS and they are going to unload a nuclear missile on this mob from the second it lands. They'll give you a misdirect, for sure, but that's it. So the Azeroth spawns. I'm in position. I'm ready to go. Boom! Shield slam. Parry. Oh my fucking god. Heroic strike. Contact. Devastate. Contact. Remember, there was no procs for shield slam. And I'm watching that timer and it's like the slowest moment in the universe. And I'm now like, oh my god, it's breathing fire on me. I survived the fire. My fire resist is working fine. Awesome. Just stupid things you worry about. What if my fire resist fails? How can it fail? I have no idea how it could possibly fail, but I was still worried about it. Shield slam missed. I'm now worried about threat. I'm looking at the threat meter. I've got Omen up, and the rogues are just like this, moving straight after me, and my TPS isn't enough. They've got a threat per second number. I've got a threat per second number. Theirs is bigger than mine. I'm living off misdirect right now. I'm really living off it. Because rogues tricked themselves back then. Fuck that. They're not tricking the tank. Fucking, and then I go, shield slam. 6 seconds have passed. I've got my shield slam. Boom! Critical strike shield slam. It's like, oh, thank God. And then the fucking fire lands is a patch. I moved side strafing. Now, side strafing as a tank and keeping something in a position is not easy to do. Not something I can really show you these days because nothing really requires it. So I side strafed it perfectly, and then fucking Illidan's eye beam's like, and it's coming towards me like a fucking truck, right? This thing, and I know this is a one-shot ability, and it's coming right at me, and I've moved to the left, so it's coming across from me. So I'd move out the way so the thing can't get me. Now the melee DPS can't DPS. Now I've been told before I did this pull that it didn't matter if it's unavoidable for him to get out of the way. It's nothing you can do about it, but I knew that if what I could do is actually just move the flame all the way around to the right, where this beam didn't interact, and the melee could DPS it if I positioned it in a certain way. Essentially, I needed to get the Flame of Azeroth inside the blue beam, and they could DPS it from other things. So the melee would have it here, the melee would be here, the blue beam in the middle with the mob inside it, and then me. And I knew if I did that, they could DPS it safely. Not very easy to do because you can't touch the blue beam and mobs don't swing, they follow. Anyway, I kind of knew how to do this and it was just in my head. It was like, if you do that, then that works. It was just something that came into my head. So I tried it and it went beautifully. I can't explain how gorgeous this moment was in tanking. If you care about tanking in any way, when you do some gorgeous movement like this, it's like, mwah! Magnifique! It was fucking beautiful. The Azeroth, the Flame of Azeroth was at like 3/4 health. The melee have come off it now, so it's all the casters. His health's not going down fast enough. I'm like panicking to shit because he's blowing the green flame everywhere, and this whole side's now a mess from a blue laser beam. And I move it back. Now, of course, I didn't realise is that the main tank guy who's deciding my live or die trial phase was part of the melee group. Of course he was. It was one of those stupid things I didn't consider. And he went, how did you do that? In the tank chat, while I was still tanking, because obviously he's just sort of auto-attacking and adding his own tank DPS to the fight, which was abysmal back then. It's like, how did you do that? And I'm like, what? And then I was like, Mr. fucking cool. I was like, what are you talking about, you know? I was like, can't you do that? Pfft, easy peasy. It was pure fucking luck the way the mob travelled. And then the mob died really quickly because the melee could DPS it. And then, while this is going on, Marathi, being old school at doing this, was typing away while he was tanking it. By the time that it got to the other side, there were so many blue beams and shit that essentially the casters were the only guys who could do it. So I ran into the melee range and just got to sort of AFK. And this chat started ensuing in the tank chat. It's like, how did you do what? And then they must have talked in real life, and he's like, oh, I don't know. And he said, did you not just leave it out of melee range? I was like, well, no, the melee needs to DPS it. And literally, Illidan died. It was a great feeling. Lovely fight. I took loads of screenshots and stuff, which I think I've lost now. And I was promoted that night. And I didn't expect that. As soon as the raid finished, I got promoted to full member. In 5 hours of being in the guild, I went from trial to member. And then the guild started spamming grats. Fantastic. Fastest promote ever. all this kind of shit started spamming, and that's when that was how you prove you're a baller. But I fell into some pretty lucky circumstances. Things went my way. Then we can look at it from the bad situation. I'm not going to tell this full story, but then I joined a guild like Method, where I didn't do any of those things. Maybe I should have. I wasn't very active on Vent. I didn't really say anything smart when I joined, or anything like that. I wasn't me in Method at all. Not something I particularly regret, but I wasn't. I had my reasons for not being as sort of loud and general as I am. And I was on trial forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And I never actually got my membership this time around. It just didn't happen. And that's the difference. Being a baller in one raid sets you apart. Doing those little things. Those two little things. Attacking the Gentis and announcing it. I saw an opportunity and I seized it, is the answer to your question. I will get back to it. If you don't take that opportunity and seize it and do something a little bit stand out. If you see an opportunity, grab it with both hands, especially when you're on trial, and roll with it. And see what you can do. And as a tank, you have a lot of opportunity to do that. I really just hope you get a chance to stand out. Because once that chance comes, fucking grab it and seize it. And then you'll get promoted, and you will always be the guy they invite. Always. Because if the other guy doesn't grab it and seize it, then you'll always be better. But try and be yourself. And if yourself is a loud, jokey guy, be a loud, jokey guy. And do it. If you're a good player, try and do something a little bit better. If you see room for improvement, just say, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And it all works out pretty well. Oh, how did I get onto that subject for like an hour? I bet it's been an hour again, hasn't it? An hour and a quarter. Okay. I think we're done for today. I'm not. I'm actually like, I've just realised how much my head is banging after telling that story. I am cheered up, but I'm in more pain. Questions after the show. Oh. Okay, I'm going to run the finale. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow. That's when we'll do the big DPS discussion. I know I promised it today, but I got into story mode. I apologise. That tends to happen. And this room is roasting. I also need to check on Ben. So have a great evening, ballers. I will see you tomorrow.